when Kendrick said, twice emotional stability, a sound body, and tranquility. I deserve it all. I deserve it all. And one of the things that I have been holding on for the last 14 years is that people are horrible. But not only that, but people who claim to be Christians are not nice people. I know it might ruffle a few feathers, me having said this, but the lovely thing is I'm going to add context and I'm going to share my experience. And my experience will hopefully help you to see yourself in my story somehow, whether as the villain or the victim. However, that might show up in your mind. I think it's time that I share my truth and how I have been dealing with this for so long. I want to start with referencing this lovely book, The Body Keeps Score, and begin in a section titled Fight or Flight. And we all know what this means, so I'm not going to explain. I'm going to read something that has resonated with me after finishing the book, that has helped me and empowered me to want to express and share my story. It says, for 100 years or more, every textbook of psychology and psychotherapy has advised that some method of talking about distressing feelings can resolve them. However, as we have seen, the experience of trauma itself gets in the way of being able to do that. No matter how much insight and understanding we develop, the rational brain is basically impotent to talk the emotional brain out of its own reality. I am continually impressed by how difficult it is for people who have gone through the unspeakable to convey the essence of their experience. It is so much easier for them to talk about what has been done to them, to tell a story of victimization and revenge, than to notice, feel, and put into words the reality of their internal experience. That was obviously self-explanatory. I went through something traumatic a couple of years ago. I had just become a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, formerly nicknamed Mormons. Some still use that. I choose not to, because that is not the reason for this video. I had been baptized in 2010. I was happy, and I was happy that I was part of an organization that promotes the essence of the gospel, which is love and forgiveness, self-discovery. And one of the things that I remember that drew me to this organization before I was baptized was the knowledge of having a personal relationship with my Heavenly Father. And I didn't grow up religious at all. My mom didn't raise my sister and I in religion. However, she always instilled values of integrity, honesty, a good work ethic, and being kind and non-judgmental towards people. And so I remember when I met with then the missionaries, they were very much surprised that I was someone who did not drink, who did not smoke, was already living a pretty clean life. And so in that moment, it wasn't very hard for me or difficult to decide to begin anew into this religion. However, it wasn't easy for those around me to embrace my newfound community. I didn't lose any friends, but it was just very hard to kind of start my new life in this faith. And something that people experience when they join a new church or start a new practice, you have to assimilate into this culture you're joining. And so that's what I had to do. And for context, I was able to be part of this organization when I lived in South Africa at the time. I'm not originally from there. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I was living in South Africa at the time. And so it wasn't a case of I was a minority, because everyone around me was Black, which was, I think, something that helped me feel at ease within the organization. Fast forward 2-3 years into my membership, I was preparing to serve a mission. And as you know, within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you can serve a full-time mission. For women, it is usually 18 months. For men, it is 2 years in the ages from 18 up until 30 or so. At that point, I was in my early 20s. I was eager and excited to serve a mission. My reason, personal reason for wanting to serve a mission was to help others know about the gospel of Jesus Christ and how it can be a relationship that can help you become the best version of yourself. And despite not knowing so much about the Bible, as in I had not read it cover to cover, I still had the testimony within myself to know that God loves his children and that he wants his children to be with him one day when we have moved on from this life. At that point, I had friends within the organization. I had wonderful connections with people, and I was excited to start this new journey of becoming a full-time missionary. In that time frame, I had been called to serve in England, which was going to be the first time that I had ever left the African continent and the first time going overseas. I was a little bit nervous and quite shocked actually that my specific mission call called me to England. I had assumed that I would serve in Africa, or I also thought that I definitely would rather be safer in Africa. For some reason, I was called to England. That trepidation was real, and I felt slightly inadequate because I was a member for about a year and a half at that point. So I was fairly new, eager, and ready to just, go out there and serve and help people. My frontal lobe had not developed yet. I was only 23, 24, I think, at the time. And so maybe I was naive, but my motivation was driven by love of others, love of self, in knowing that I have this relationship with my Father in heaven. And so that's what was propelling my desire and moving me to action. And at that time, I remember I was dating someone who was also a member of the church, and they had been raised into this organization. So they were more grounded and rooted, and obviously were comfortable in the knowledge they have and the things that they're done. And so I, in that moment, was feeling somewhat safe that I had somebody that I was with that would be able to help me navigate this new life. And looking back now, I think that was where my blind spot was, because I believed that everybody in this church was perfect. I know, I cannot believe that I thought that too. People were perfect, people were nice. I thought these people were better than me, as in they were just so good and grounded and wonderful. And I, though had been just as good not being a member, felt that I had to somehow catch up to everybody else and reach, whatever level they were at, which was obviously not good for me to think about at that time. But that's the kind of mentality that I had, that I just wanted to be like everybody else, be better and be perfect. And then it went sideways. So anyway, fast forward to when I went to visit him. And this was like a few weeks or even less before I had to fly out to England for my full-time mission. And this is something that I have repressed for a very long time. And not because, I don't know, I just feel like everything I've done since what happened to me has been me subconsciously trying to forget that in fact happened to me, if that makes sense. Only 10 years after the event, I was able to have all of this come out in therapy. And I realized that I had all of these issues that my brain had just kind of tucked away so that I don't have to face it. And so picture this, I'm excited to go to England to be a missionary. I feel renewed because I'm now part of this organization. I'm happy. I'm looking forward to helping people. I'm dating someone who I thought at the time was there for me, would protect me, would be there for me pretty much in every way, shape, and form. But alas, he didn't have my best interests at heart, and he was very much, for lack of a better way to explain it, playing me the whole time, unbeknownst to myself. And the interesting thing also, he was the first guy I dated within this organization. And now looking back, I wonder if me not choosing to marry someone from the Mormon faith has been a direct correlation with that, because of what I experienced. He sexually assaulted me a few weeks, I think 2 weeks before I went on my mission. And I remember, what I distinctly remember after replaying this in therapy was, I made a decision to myself after this happened that I was going to be there for other people. I told myself that I'm going to love people. I'm going to love them to the point where I forget my own pain. I'm going to love people to the point where I will not feel as worthless as I did in that moment. And so I remember leaving for my mission and spending 18 months in England, just immersed in the service of others. I completely repressed this traumatic thing, and I just focused on being a missionary. I remember coming back from my mission 18 months later. I had this, and then I didn't know what it was, but I just had this innate desire to not be around men when other women are not there. Like, I just had this thing where I had to be around women. I just felt safer around women. And at the time, I didn't know it was because in my mind, my brain had already wired and trained me to realize that men were not a safe space because of what I had gone through. And so it was very hard for me, because I remember dating casually, but I wasn't invested. At that time, I had been wanting to just leave, to be out of there, out of the country, out of South Africa. I just wanted to leave. I didn't want to be there. On the other hand, this guy who had assaulted me was contacting me incessantly. It just triggered something inside of me where I was like, I don't want to be around this person. I don't want to feel this, disgusting feeling I had. And I remember I just wanted to keep myself busy mentally so that I don't have to relive or think about this thing. And I was fortunate enough to go to the US in 2017 for school. This was years after this had happened to me, like 5 years after my mission. Went to BYU, Idaho, which is also a private university for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I remember that actually didn't help being at that school, because it just made things worse for me, because I then faced racism. I faced microaggressions every day. It was rough, and newly moved to a new country. And in that way, in my mind, I thought, America, it's, land of milk and honey. People are great, all of these things. But I then realized that, wait a minute, these same people I wanted to be like, these same people I put on a pedestal, now my eyes were open to the point where I was like, these people are not good people. And that's not to say there aren't good people in the organization. They are truly so many wonderful people who now have become some really close friends. But then I was just being targeted, so to speak. I was just experiencing a lot of racism. I remember talking about it with my friends who were back home when I would call them and I would just say, I'm not having a good time. I don't like it here. It's not good for me. I remember my friends, encouraging me to just, keep going and graduate and, get out of there, just trying to help me. But I remember one friend I had met there was like, maybe try therapy. And at that time, I'd never tried therapy. I'd never decided to be in therapy. I was like, I don't know how I would feel about that, talking to a stranger about my problems. She encouraged me and said, it might help me process what I was going through. And unbeknownst to me, all these feelings of um, threat, as in feeling the racism and feeling that otherness that I was made to feel, me sticking out, the only Cocoa Puff in a sea of Rice Krispies, I just felt like it didn't feel like home. It didn't feel like home. It was just really hard. And so I started seeing a therapist on campus, and that's where all these repressed experiences and feelings of this traumatic thing I'd experienced years ago started, coming to the surface. And I remember my therapist saying, you've used hard work and just focus and productivity as your coping mechanism. Like on your mission, you were working to help people and you just focused on that your brain protected you and you kind of forgot all of these things. And now that it's here, because you're experiencing something that is mirroring the same distress you felt when you experienced this traumatic thing, that is why you're feeling, out of control and you're feeling like you don't have a firm grasp on your emotional well-being, your mental state. It was bad. I was diagnosed with PTSD, MDD. It was really hard during that time. I was in a lot of pain, like emotional pain, and I couldn't talk to anybody about this particular thing that had happened to me except for my therapist at the time. After being diagnosed with this, I was experiencing nightmares. I couldn't sleep. I was deeply depressed because in that moment I realized, or I was going through feelings of unworthiness, not being good enough, and not fitting this mold. I felt isolated from everyone around me because I thought no one else here would understand what I've gone through. No one here will be able to really see how this is painful. And, my mom having passed away years before joining the church, I didn't have anyone to really talk to. I remember once trying to talk to a friend about this, and I remember, we were talking, and I'm not friends with this person anymore. In that moment, I wanted to tell them, but they just never gave me the space to share. I never felt like they created a safe space for me to share this because of the things they would say. So it was very hard. And most people who go through sexual assault, one, they're never believed. That's why most women do not come forward and express and share what they went through. And more so for me, I felt like no one would understand that this happened to me because I was so high functioning as a person. I didn't crumble when it happened to me. I just, my brain just tuned it out, and productivity and working became my coping mechanism and my hyper independence. And so now that I was in a place where everyone is seemingly perfect, everyone is, working towards this goal of, college and graduating, I felt like I was back to being a little child who wasn't sure of themselves, who didn't know who they were. And couple that with moving to a new country and not having any family in that country and just trying to navigate all of that. It was a really dark time. I don't know how I got through it, to be quite honest. Therapy might have been one of my saving graces, and being put on, antidepressants has helped, and just talking about it with healthcare professionals, because those are the only people at that time I could trust to share what I was going through. So, yeah, this is the first time I'm saying it out loud to anyone who will see this, that this is something that I went through. I have come a long way from that initial time where I couldn't even function well. Now, what I'm experiencing is the after effects of having to work through someone who has gone through a traumatic experience. And everyone who's experienced trauma goes through this phase where you're trying to rebuild your life, pretty much. You're trying to find the you that either you were before this bad thing happened to you, or the you can become in spite of this bad thing that happened to you. That's where I am. I've been questioning a lot about the people that surround me in this church, in this wonderful organization, and how a lot of people are being hurt in one way or the other, and they can't find somewhere where they can either be their true selves, or a place where they can feel heard, loved, and affirmed. That's been really hard for most of the people I know. My friends who have since left the organization, the church, and I respect their decisions. I myself am on the verge of, just walking away because of how I have been treated, and how the culture in the church allows for abusers to just have normal lives, and victims are not either heard or are not believed. It's usually something wrong with you, the person who's been abused, and it's never the perpetrator's fault. That's been my experience, at least. 14 years later, I have, decided that I have agency over owning the life that I have. The bad, the good, I'm owning it. I've had a lot of, wonderful experiences through sharing a little bit of my story with friends, and people sharing with me the traumatic things they've gone through over the years. That has helped me recognize that I'm not alone. And maybe that's one of the reasons I've stuck it out for so long, because in my mind, I've always felt like, I'm not the only one. Other people are going through hard things. Other people are experiencing, stuff. So in that respect, I am not alone. But how can you heal in the same environment that traumatized you? Like, it's very hard, right, to heal in that same environment. And thank goodness I'm no longer in America. I since immigrated out of that country. But like the book says, the body keeps the score. I am not married. I'm happily single, which is fantastic for me. I love that for myself. And as my therapist always says, it's going to take me time to trust men, to have this calm feeling of being safe around a man, because of what I've experienced. And there's only been like 3 or 4 men since experiencing this that I have truly felt safe around. And those men are wonderful people, and they're the only people I could want to be around. Everybody else, I don't know, because I just can't see myself wanting to be, or envying to be with someone who says they know God and they love God, but they choose to do despicable things to God's children. It's just horrible. And so, besides the racism, the sexism, the misogyny, the purity culture that is within the church, and all even worse for people who are of the LGBTQ community and Black people like myself. So many things that we're struggling with. And I don't want to turn this into a me hating the organization as a whole. No, because there are good things about it. The church is run by Jesus Christ, but the people for some reason are refusing to apply Jesus Christ's message in real time. And that's why we're having all these issues. And some leadership is unfortunately complicit. And it's just a lot of things. And so right now, all I'm focusing on is my own personal healing, how I can move forward. Not sure what that looks like yet, but I am taking the steps and ownership, like I said, where I am wanting to change my perspective, my life. I've come a long way in healing from, being paranoid to now being openly able to talk about this. And I don't know, I think it takes a lot of for someone to even want to share out loud what they've experienced, but more so we do it because we want another person to not have to experience what we did, and we also want to raise awareness that these things are happening. And if anything, it can also compel other people to do better, whether in their speech or in their actions. We always expect people to, be introspective in seeing what they are adding to the trauma that everyone is collectively feeling. My hope for and my goal, like I told my friends, my goal for this video was to share a little bit of what I've gone through and to hope that what I share resonates with someone, but more so helps them realize that they're not alone in having experienced something traumatic within the church, not just this church, but in any kind of church setting. And also for them to recognize that you can overcome, you can move on, get the help, professional help it be, and find happiness and joy on the other side, as I did. But it's hard. It's really hard to have someone treat you like you are nothing and just discard you, and you are just meant to pick up the pieces and try and make sense of what happened to you. It's very hard. Doing this video, I'm trying to be as calm as I can be, but I'm more angry at myself for, and I know I shouldn't be angry at myself because there's nothing I could have done in that moment. I just froze. I didn't know what to do. I was in shock. But I'm more disappointed that a lot of women deal with this in and out of religious faiths. They deal with this where they are assaulted by men who are supposed to be quote unquote protectors. And I think that has become the main reason most millennials like myself are choosing to not get married or choosing to not want to be married, because we do not know if we can trust men. My reasons are obviously not necessarily that, but more so I can't trust anyone who claims to have love for Jesus or have this strong connection with spirituality, but then, their actions are the complete opposite. I don't know. It's just something that I'm still unpacking and working on. But now I've reached a point where when I go to church, I feel so heavy. My heart beats. I have a tightness in my chest. I'm nervous at, what people might say to me. And this is, terrified of people, asking. My worst question that anyone can ask me is, how come you're not married yet? You're still single? It's like, I am more than just having a dude standing next to me. So much more I can offer. in this life than me being tied to someone. I feel like within this organization, you are a second class citizen if you're not married and you don't have children, and you're just a second class citizen. I've just seen with the people that I'm surrounded with how this is something that happens to everybody. And my question is, where can us who have been hurt by the very people whom we trust, where's our safe space? Who is creating that safe space? Who's going to create that safe space for us? Because we are doing this work of trying to free our bodies and being friends with our bodies again after experiencing all of these things. But where can we find community? Where can we find a place where we don't feel judged, where we don't feel like we are not good enough? I've stuck it out for 14 years now, and I'm yet to see that. I have not yet seen it. If anything, it's the few friends I've had who've created those spaces for me. But at an worldwide church level, I really haven't seen it. We might talk about people experiencing trauma, but we don't really delve into what if that trauma is being caused by the very people we're supposed to seek um, comfort from. It's very hard. And something that I love that is talked about in the book, The Body Keeps the Score, is, when you go through something traumatic, you emotionally detach yourself. It's like you look at what you experienced um, from the perspective of from the outside looking in, and what therapy now does is help you get back into your body, feel that, and find a way to now connect again with yourself, your true sense of self that is not going to let that trauma be you. And that's what I've done. It has taken me a long time, but I'm so happy that I've reached a point where I am happier. I am in touch with my body in a good way. I love my body now. I don't hate it. I don't feel like I've, you know, am not worthy. I feel very much free. And it has taken a lot of transformation and a lot of self work to get to this point. But I'm not going to keep allowing myself to be in spaces where I might feel othered. It's worse off when you experience racism as a Black person. You're not going to want to be around people who, you feel like that. You're going to want to be around people who can affirm you, people who recognize that you're different, but see that as a blessing, as something that is an addition to life and not something that is, should be seen as an other, us versus them. I'm choosing to let go. I'm choosing to move on, but I do question, where can we find peace if the place where we hope to find that inclusivity and togetherness is the same place that's instilling that pain? Because I remember someone said to me that, they were asking me, like, why do you stay? Why do you choose to stay and be part of this church when all of this has happened? And back then, I never had a real answer except that, I believe that, I go to church for Jesus, my love for Jesus, etc. But now, with everything that I've dealt with and the knowledge that I now have, I can be a Christian and not have to be in a toxic environment with the hopes that everyone will get better at some point while I continue to suffer, while I continue to feel othered. It's not healthy, and quite frankly, therapy has taught me that that's not how you heal. So in taking onus of myself and my life, I've chosen to just look at what are the things that bring me joy. Where are the places that I feel love? What do I have to do to always feel like I am worthy, I matter, and I'm important. Those are the places that I will frequent, whether that's within my friend group or my family or at church. I don't know, but I'm only going to go where I'm loved and not just tolerated because we so happen to belong to the same religious organization. Because that's what happens sometimes. People will only tolerate you because unfortunately we're under the same thing, but they necessarily do not see you or care or hear you. Just wanted to share that. Maybe I will go into depth if questions are asked. You can get through this, whoever you are watching this.